You know, I've spent a lot of time playing games over the last few years. I think we've all done something similar. There wasn't a whole lot to do during that time. But when I stopped to think about it, the media that I gravitated to the most that time were the ones that would send me to a different world, mentally. One where I wasn't surrounded and worried by a global pandemic or feeling cooped up between four walls all day. I think we've all felt that draw, that need to get out of our heads since we couldn't get out of our houses. And whether by the way of music, movies, or games, all sorts of media was brought to our attention by necessity that allowed us to escape in some way. Recently, and by recently I mean within the last 4 years, no game has been able to do that, to give me this feeling like, well, my manager's telling me I shouldn't talk about that game, but the other game I spent around 200 hours playing was Wildermyth.
Something in the woods is very strange. Creatures lurking suffer worse than mange. No one knows what winter yet will bring. Something in the woods is very strange.
Now, outside of Adam Millard, I haven't really seen very many people talking about this game. A lot of my friends play a lot on Steam and they buy a lot of games, but I haven't seen any of them play it either, not since I started. And I won't say I'm nearly as big as Adam Millard is, but a title as whimsical and lovely as this one deserves a love letter. So this one goes out to the developers. You hear me, World Walker Games? This one's for you. Now, I haven't experienced 100% of the game and I'm nowhere near getting all of the trophies. But this game has done wonders for me. It's given me a wonderful experience through and through, and it's got a special place in my heart. Released 4 years ago now, Wildermyth is a procedurally generated tactical RPG with this papercraft art style and comic book narrative styling. You begin any campaign with 3 randomized characters, each with one of the 3 available class options, so you can have a good team variety from the start. Those classes are the Warrior, the Hunter, and the Mystic, and just based on those names, assuming you've played literally any RPG in the last 30 years, you should be able to figure out what they entail based on the names alone. That isn't to say that you'll be stuck with the party of Warrior, Hunter, and Mystic for very long. When you start a campaign, the game usually allows you to hire on an extra 4th hand after you play through the first mission of the game, and they get to be whatever you want. If you think your team needs an extra bulky frontliner, then hire you some meat. If you want another stealthy skulker taking pot shots from the bushes, then you want to get another dick-ass thief. And if you need another pair of glasses to do your homework because the first one you got only does the math homework, then go find you another dork for social studies. But I'm not here to explain shit about combat flow, or how optimal play looks, or how to deal with enemy variety. Nah, I'm here to gush about the smaller details, the ones that you only see if you scroll for the supplementary bullshit. Yeah, that's right, we're talking about personality traits, so sit down! In Wildermyth, characters are socially made up from 2 categories, hooks and personalities. Personalities have a number of ranges, but each character can only have 2 of them, and they decide how characters interact with each other. Now, I figured out which ones jive well with others, but I couldn't tell you what the math is on that equation. But it is good to know what they mean because they dictate how certain relationships can build. Rivalries sprouted over mishaps and competition, friendships formed over campfires and sunsets, and love really can bloom on the battlefield. Or something. My one gripe is that there can only be one relationship between a single pair of characters, and it's locked during the campaign. So lovers can't also be rivals or friends, and rivals can't develop into being friends or lovers. Not that I will complain about that. The rivals and lovers relationships are incredibly strong, even on their own as mechanics, with lovers being granted bonus damage against enemies that attack their spouse, and rivals gaining ludicrous crit chance whenever their rival critically strikes another enemy. Then you have hooks. Every character gets 3 of these, and they decide how characters approach different story beats and random events. How they'll say different things and give you a variety of options as far as how you want to approach solutions to problems. A brash hero might run headlong into battle, while a curious one may be interested in playing things diplomatically. Hooks can also help relationships develop further. Each hook has an opportunity quest, and those quests are based on a hero's relationship, triggering a new hook when reaching to 3rd, 4th, or 5th relationship level with another hero respectively. That other hero is then required to join along on this quest, and you can have them invite a literal third wheel to tag along for moral support and nothing else. Like, they steal little XP, but they will have literally no input during the time that they spend, and I find that hilarious. Aside from the obvious benefit of having your hero immediately level up and push back their retirement age, you want to get these quests done as soon as possible. They're perfect opportunities for your characters to further develop their relationships and interact with each other, and the conversations between your heroes are always worth it. It never ceases to fill me with this sense of whimsy when I see party talk mechanics in games. Final Fantasy IX, the Bravely series, Legend of Dragoon, when my heroes all talk amongst each other like casual friends despite facing damning odds on their countless harrowing adventures, I love that shit. I eat it up. I get this feeling of sobering warmth every time I see them sit down at a campfire and just talk about how they're at the end of the world and they're pissed off that they got a rock in their shoe. I'm telling you, Wildermyth gets it really right. Your characters are facing down these impossible scenarios and have these close shaves that would make normal people retire on a near daily basis. Meanwhile, they're just spending their time clowning around a campfire or diving into clearly man-made cave structures that might be trapped, and they're cracking jokes and telling tales as they prepare for battle. It's magic every time. It's small stuff like, "Oh hey, Lusra, you're looking well. Something different? Let me guess, it's a new haircut, right?" Yeah, I ain't never beaten the furry allegations, am I? But the simplest way that the game most easily relates to reality that I've found is through character disease, injury, and death. All of these things are permanent. No matter what you do, they will affect the lives of your characters if they're unfortunate enough to experience them, and we've all become very aware of that reality in our own daily lives as well. And while we don't have to worry about eventually being changed physically and mentally, or being turned into a monster like the diseases in Wildermyth do, I know for a fact that you've had to meet some pretty monstrous people in recent time because of this pandemic, as well as the fear of who you've had to change into because of the risks you face with social interaction. Injury too lasts all of our lives. You tear your ACL and your sports career is ruined. Carpal tunnel has ended writing, artist, and developer careers for centuries. And in Wildermyth, it's kind of no different. Characters face injury and death when their health is depleted, and they can come out with missing eyes, arms, legs. Hell, I've had a character come out the back end of a game looking like Seamus Levine from Family Guy. I didn't honestly know he had a full name till I googled him for this exact clip. But still the spirit persists, the body unwilling, but the dream yet lives on. Though that can only last as long as the body holds out. Death is the ultimate end for everybody. Tactical games have had permanent character death for years. It's all a part of the difficulty. You see it in everything these days, from Fire Emblem to Rogue Legacy. There's no escaping it, least of all in reality. And I'll be the first to admit, yes, I do. I have been known to save scum. Oh yeah, boo me all you want. But listen, I win games, alright? Damn. See, I've always had a hard time with the concept of finality and mortality. Death has scared me for years, and I think in some regard we all kind of fear that. But that being said, the first time I had a character death in Wildermyth was a game changer for me. I'd reached the final chapter of this campaign and faced down with the final boss, a hulking behemoth who crushed the very terrain around my party as they walked. It wasn't the first beast to do this, and I hadn't lost to anyone up to that point, so I was extremely confident. I remember my setup so vividly too. We were 3 warriors, a ranger who had been corrupted by the enemy's influence, and a mystic. My first warrior, Hallie, was blessed by lightning and she could channel electricity and thunder. My second warrior, Theli, could fly and she wielded a fully upgraded legendary Minotaur's axe, a sacred artifact. There was my ranger, Vale. She had traps, poison, her shots pierced enemy armor. And my mystic, Halligan, son of Vale, had decent spell damage and played support really well. It was the whole 9 yards setup. Then there was my third warrior, Farley, daughter of Vale and woefully in over her head. She had a personality that clashed with Theli, and they developed this rivalry really early on. Theli was an absolute monster though, and she tore through everything up to that point, so I had confidence that this fight would be no different and I wouldn't really need Farley. I'd positioned Theli ahead of the others, and somehow Farley managed to keep up with her despite not being able to fly herself. They saw the beast drawing closer, but they were able to get the first couple of hits in. Theli scored a critical hit, chunking the boss down to around half health, and unfortunately Farley was just out of range to take advantage of that. Still felt pretty damn confident about the fight though. Then the unthinkable happened. With one fell swoop, one attack, it clobbered Theli, killing her instantly. Her armor couldn't stop it. There wasn't any critical strike, it just did that much damage. I was at a loss for words. In that one moment, the single strongest hero in my party died, and with her went the strongest armor and weapon I had at my disposal. It all kind of felt hopeless for a moment. The game described her last moments to me in brief and gave one last prompt. Theli was going to die regardless of the choice made, but she could either deal a sizable chunk of damage to the boss with a kamikaze attack or give her party a bonus health and defense. Now, let's cut the bullshit. You already know which one I chose. Like, come on. Damage or no damage, I'm always choosing damage. But the boss lived. It saw a magic pixel and it was back to my turn again. I knew that the next round it was going to be Raps, and I considered the options. Vale or Halligan could just as easily have shot the beast down. Hell, even Hallie could just zap it with lightning from a distance. But then I looked down and I saw Farley just standing there all alone on the front lines, and it struck me. The entire time, Farley had been chasing Theli's shadow, trying to outdo her, and now it was up to her to finally finish something that Theli couldn't. Now, not out of spite, or because of some silly competition, but because this was what needed to be done. So, Farley closed the gap, and with a single swing from her greatsword, she finished the job. There wasn't any fanfare for Theli's end. They won the day, but they didn't have time to erect a monument in her honor. She was silently buried in her hometown, where the wardens of the Full Table had hired her originally. They all retired shortly after that, and the end of the campaign saw peace to the land. But Farley wasn't satisfied, and honestly neither was I. I had her go out again on an adventure in a legacy campaign I played later, and she led this group of adventurers of her own, known as the Southern Straw. But that's a story for another time. Do you see what I'm getting at here? At no point during that last encounter did it ever occur to me that I could simply play through the fight, test the waters, and escape out to an autosave and go back in and cheese it. I absolutely could have, but I never did. It didn't register as an option to me, even once. Wildermyth has this magical way of endearing the heroes you play to you as characters in a story might. Whether they live or die is all up to chance, but by the end of the tale, you don't have any regrets for what happened and what didn't. In my experience, I look back fondly on each campaign I run almost as fondly as I do with my own memories. Hell, I even made a cheesy thread of tweets about the end of my first campaign on Twitter. It was that good. If I can be even just a little bit more real with you, Wildermyth sort of helped me out with my own fear of death. I had a long stint of 4 years, all capping off with the year the pandemic started, where I'd experienced 5 deaths in my family back to back. 5 funerals in a row later, and I was an absolute mess. I'd had regrets over things I could have said, times I'd chosen not to visit or simply just missed the opportunity to, and not being able to see them one last time before they left my life. I look back at those family members of mine in a way I imagine the heroes I've played in Wildermyth might look back on their lost adventurers, and though I know that they're not real, the feeling that it can happen to anyone at any time and we can't prepare for it has kind of helped me not blame myself, and they've eased up my feelings of regret. I can't say the game is for everyone, or that it's always going to be a fresh experience every time you play it. Hell, I'm guilty of using a ton of mods nowadays. but it has made the last year of mine much more bearable than it would have been otherwise. I've been able to come to terms with a lot of things, and Wildermyth helped out a ton. So this video is just a big thank you to World Walker Games, and honestly, there's a soundtrack Kickstarter that's already well above its goal, and I highly recommend checking that out because the soundtrack for Wildermyth is absolutely phenomenal. You've been listening to it the entire time. This is just the overworld theme. So if you enjoy that really relaxing, tavern-esque, Dungeons and Dragons style of music, I highly recommend checking out the Kickstarter and throwing them a couple of bucks to make sure that you can get you a copy of that soundtrack when they're done with it. At this point, I'd like to say thank you all for watching. I highly recommend playing Wildermyth yourself. It's well worth the 25 bucks or however much that is converted, but if you can catch it on sale, that's also well worth it too. There's also 2 D&D campaigns I played through with my closest friends that are on this channel, and if you don't have a weak stomach for severe profanity, I recommend giving those a look. But regardless of whether or not you check those out, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day or night regardless.